Okay, so we're starting off on day 2. So first of all, what's a bias? Yeah. So stereotypes, things that can influence you to think a certain way. Are all stereotypes bad? But do we all have them? Okay, cool. Good. All right, so first things first, when we're thinking about bias, I definitely want to talk about the video. So did you guys watch the video? No, if you didn't, you need to watch it by Friday because you do have a discussion, which is what we're gonna go over first. So now that you watched the video discussion, or will watch it, hint, hint, I would like you to reflect on some of the ideas we discussed. In particular, these 2 quotes. Okay, so we actually read this quote word by word in it, and it says, it's John Lewis, and it's getting good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. So it's the last question we discussed in the video. Another hint, don't have to watch the whole thing, kind of just go towards the end to see what we say about it. But we also bring up this quote, but not word for word. We kind of paraphrase it, and it's by James Baldwin, and it says, the paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated. Sounds really fancy, doesn't it? Basically, it's just saying the more you learn, the more you question everything around you. Okay, have you ever heard that? Yeah. Okay, so what I want you to do is choose one of these quotes, and you're gonna tell me what you think about it, right? So choose one of the quotes and share your own thoughts on it, and use what we said within the discussion to help support your thoughts. So you're gonna go and look at the discussion, see what we say about these 2 quotes, choose one, and then tell me if you agree, disagree, what are your thoughts, and does any of that align with what we said in the video? Make sense? Okay. But that's not all you have to do. Once you do your initial post, you're going to respond to your peers. You're going to choose 2 of your peers' posts, original posts, and you're going to respond back to it. But I don't want you just to be like, that's good, agreed, right? None of that. What we're going to do is we're going to follow this rubric. And this is the rubric we're going to be using all year for discussion posts. So, participation. Student participated at least 3 times during the class discussion. So that's the initial post plus your 2 peer posts. And it's relevant, productive, and appropriate. What does relevant mean? Related to the topic, yeah. So if we're talking about John Lewis's quote, we're not gonna go start talking about anime, right? Like, I mean, I could talk about anime all day, but that's not relevant to the post, okay? If it's not relevant, you're just automatically gonna get 0 points, okay? If you only do 1 to 2 times, then you're gonna get 1 point. Reflection, this is a huge one right here. Demonstrated in-depth thinking and specific examples in at least 3 to 5 sentences. Get used to 3 to 5 sentences. That is always my minimum for any type of posting I make you do, okay? It'll be 3 to 5 and 150 words. Those are my 2 minimums. So in-depth means I want you to share your thoughts. Don't just tell me this is what it means. I already know what it means, right? I put it there, so I know what it means. I want you to tell me what you think it means. What does it mean to you? How do you connect to it? How does it connect to the world? If you kind of give me surface level thinking and you kind of give me some vague examples and only do less than 3, you're gonna only get 1 point. And if you don't provide a response, obviously you get a 0. I can't grade something I don't have, right? So reference to source. So what would be the source in this scenario? The quote and what else? The video. So both of those are going to be sources. So to get the maximum points, you're going to refer directly to the source at least once, citing specifics. Now, I'm not saying use our words word for word, but if you say, when Mr. Johnson said, or when Miss Pena Bowie said, I agree, blah, 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 then you're citing a source, okay? If you're kind of vague, and when you're like, one of those teachers said this, I think, kind of, sort of, maybe, that's kind of vague, 1 point. If you don't refer to the text at all, you get 0. And then your response to peers. Response directly to 2 peers' comments by directly agreeing or disagreeing with what is said and referring to the students by name. So you need to get used to replying and saying, hey, so-and-so, I agree because. Now, if you struggle with any of this, I'm so nice. I provide sentence stamps for you guys to kind of get you started. But later, I'm going to take these away and you're going to have to be on your own, okay? But since this is the first time, I'm going to let you do that. This is due by Friday by 11:59 p.m., but you want to get your initial post up as soon as possible so that people can respond to you. Make sense? Sound easy? Easy, yay? I think so. Any questions? All right. So now we're going to go back to biases. And so what you guys have learned right now has been kind of surface level, where we know what a bias is. And that's just a quick recap. Right? Everyone has biases and they influence our every interaction. Racism is not bias, but racism is a bias, if that makes sense, right? So it's a form of bias. And it's important to acknowledge our own biases. Why is that? That's a really good one. Yeah, if you're in the medical field, you're going to come across a lot of people, right? And you don't want your biases to influence that. What are some other reasons? Do you like it when people put their biases on you? No, right? So if you can acknowledge your own biases, then you can avoid doing that to somebody else, right? I'm a teacher. I come across lots of students. Not only am I a teacher, I'm an ESL teacher as well, right? I'm one of the ESL people. So that means I come across students from all around the world. So it's kind of important, right, that I know my biases and acknowledge them and make sure that I'm not putting those on my students, right? So those are the reasons why it would be important. But that's just the surface level. There's actually many layers to biases and how we categorize them. And I need you guys to understand what those are as we move forward, because we're going to be talking about biases and those types of things long into the future. Okay, so the first layer is ideology. So what is an ideology? Well, there's a fancy definition for it. The manner or the content of thinking characteristics of an individual, group, or culture, and a systematic body of concepts, especially about human life or culture. So that seems like just a bunch of words thrown together, but in plain speak, it basically means a set of ideas about life and culture that are grouped together by their common characteristics or traits. So think about it, right? Like you have your own way of thinking. You tend to hang around other people that might share that way of thinking. So if you group that together, that's an ideology, right? But there might be some differences. So this is the very first layer, and what we do is we divide it into those ideologies. We have left, which is a liberal point of view, center, which is a mix of liberal and conservative points of view, and right, which is conservative points of view. So first of all, what's a point of view? Where you stand on something, right? From where that it's being judged or being told, right? From your perspective. Okay, so what does it actually mean to say liberal and conservative? Okay, so liberal point of view, ideas that tend to allow for more open-minded methods that often do not follow the traditional methods and ways of thinking. Therefore, they may often advocate or fight for the changing of existing conditions or institutions. Now, FYI, I pulled this directly from the dictionary. So that's not me saying that it's a more forward way of thinking and open-minded, it's the dictionary. So it's basically the idea of I am willing to accept change. Maybe we should change this for the better, right? If I think this system that exists right now, we should change it for the better, or it could be better in this way, right? That is considered a liberal way of thinking. Conservative, on the other hand, tends to follow traditional methods and ways of thinking. Therefore, they advocate or fight for maintaining existing conditions and institutions. So conservative pretty much means I like what's happening now, and I want to keep it the same. Or sometimes they can even want to go back. One conservative way of thinking is, you hear the slogan all the time, make America great again, right? That is a conservative way of thinking. It's saying we're going to go back or we're going to keep things the same. Okay, so that's the difference. You guys see the difference in those two? Yes, no? No fun. So, but do you guys understand that between the two differences? Yes, no? Am I deaf? Yes. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Garcia. So, that's the first layer. The second layer is for the political point of view. So in the United States, we have two main parties. We have the Democrats and the Republicans. However, there are also moderates. Okay? Democrats are considered liberal, Republicans are considered conservative, and moderates are a mix of both liberal and conservative. So you guys should be hearing a lot about this lately because the election's coming up, right? So we know that there's these two different types, but we need to have a better understanding of how it actually works. So this is an interactive image. So when you guys actually are looking at it in Schoology, you'll be able to click these and you'll find certain things out. So we consider this a spectrum. What's a spectrum? Yeah, like a scale. A lot of times you'll hear like color spectrum, light spectrum. So here's my question. If I'm on the left, does that mean I believe all of this? No. I could maybe be right here, or I believe some of this, but then there's some things over here. Okay, so the left tends to be for more social programs. Does anybody know what some of those social programs might be? So education is one, public school. Equal rights, yeah. So food stamps, Social Security, Medicare, student loans, healthcare, right? If you get free and reduced lunch, that is a social program. If you get food stamps, which Ms. Garcia used to get, that is a social program. Housing. So those are all considered social programs where the society helps the people, okay? So that tends to be more of a left ideology. If you click on this, this will give you more of the things that they tend to favor, okay? On the right, the things they tend to favor is decreased government involvement in economic issues. They would actually prefer that we don't have these social programs. It's more of a pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Have you ever heard that saying? Okay. Basically, it's meaning fend for yourself. You figure it out, right? So they don't want the government to be involved in these social programs. They're more for personal responsibility, and they're very strict on following the Constitution to a T, to what it says, okay? And you'll learn more about that in your history classes. So you have the left, you have the right, and then you have the center. So the center is more about doing what's right regardless of what is popular and about compromise. So they're not concerned about, oh, it's a Democratic thing, it's a Republican thing. They just want what they consider to be right, okay? So here's the reason you need to know this, is as we read articles or we have discussions, as you watch the news, everybody has a bias, right? We've already said that. So some of the places you're going to get your text from are also going to be biased. And so you need to know what that is. So over here on the left, we have these particular media stations that tend to fall on the left. Does that mean everything they write is leftist? No, just a majority of what they write, right? So we have CNN, right? CNN tends to be more liberal. So where you have on the right, what TV station do you think's on the right? Let me see. Fox News, yes. Fox News is considered on the right. So let me test your knowledge. Who are some of our Democratic presidents in the past? Barack Obama. Who else? Yeah, they're really young. So huh? No, Clinton. What did you say? John F. Kennedy? Yes, he was a Democratic. Mm-hmm. So, huh? So, what about some of our Republican presidents? Trump and who else?
Nixon.
Nixon, who else? There are two by the same name. Roosevelt, I think actually was, I have to look up. Bush. How about Lincoln?
No. Yeah.
Lincoln was a Republican, but that was before it switched. So you'll learn more about that in history. But that's interesting. He really, yeah, you think. So you'll learn later that that tends to switch. So basically you have this, right? So you have the spectrum. Just because somebody's over here doesn't mean that they agree with all of this. Just because they're over here, right? So let's say, does everybody know who Biden is? Okay. So let's say if Biden's right here, where would Bernie Sanders be? Bernie Sanders? No, the other guy that he was trying to get the nomination. Bernie Sanders. Old guy.
Be like a little bit more.
Yeah, he's over here actually. Because he believes in something called socialism. Where would Hillary Clinton? Yeah, where would Hillary Clinton have fallen? Yeah. Okay. And where would Trump be? You would think so, right? You think all the way over here? But in reality, he has notoriously been here. Mm-hmm. That would be more similar. Well, the politics back then were a lot different, so I think he'd more be a centrist. Because he really didn't want a lot of government control, but he knew there had to be some. So basically, this is where you have. So everything you read, yes.
What was Marxism?
Marxism?
Yeah, since it was somewhat connected to communism.
That tends to be over there. Because that's government control.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So what you will find as you go through life is politics is great in theory. A lot of political systems are great in theory, not in practice. Okay. So when you hear these terms like socialism, communism, democracy, a lot of these, they're really great in theory. Yeah, so it's kind of, to me it's interesting, but you know. Yes, and so exactly, and so that's kind of what I want to talk about. So important notes. The media right now, because we are going to be talking about a lot of media in this next unit, tends to hyper-exaggerate left and right points of view. What does that mean? It means that media in all formats can often make points of view of both the left and the right seem extreme or either or. This is not necessarily the case in real life, as most, but not all people tend to be a mix of both points of view, right? So I can be liberal, but maybe there are some things that I'm more conservative on, right? And you'll see that. And when I say hyper exaggerate, it seems like it has to be neither or. You're either this side or you're this side. Yeah. Exactly. So it makes it seem like everything is extreme, and it's not necessary. Most people are kind of a mix of both. Okay. And what's funny with that is that there's certain points of view. So like everybody assumes all minorities are what? What do you think they think?
Black.
Yeah, but what side do you think they think?
Oh,
Democrats, right? But my grandparents, older Mexicans, they were Republican. They were more conservative. There's a lot of Cubans that are more conservative. I had a student last year who was African American, and he was a hardcore Republican. I'm convinced he's going to be president one day, and he's going to be a Republican president. And I'm going to be like, I knew that kid. So you have to make sure your biases are not influencing how you think of their side. Okay. Even within the left, right, and center, there are various degrees as these belief systems fall on the spectrum. For instance, one person that might have liberal ideals, but they are not as liberal as the person next. So the first person might be just left of center while the other is way to the left. Okay. And so that's what some people actually argue is the problem with the two-party system, is because there's such a wide range of people that fall in the group. No matter what side a person or text falls on, it's important to consider their stance and be respectful. You may not agree with what they believe, but you still need to listen to what they have to say. Why should I listen to what they have to say? You could change your viewpoints, or I could gain what? I can gain more knowledge about why they believe it the way they believe, right? I may not ever understand why you believe the way it is, but if you give me some ideas, like if you explain, well, this is what I think, I'm more willing to hear you out. And also, wouldn't you want somebody to hear you out on your opinions? So that's kind of that idea. So when it comes to sources and bias, as allsides.com, and you guys need to remember this because this is a great site for research, explains you need to consume a balanced news diet. Therefore, when researching a topic, you need to consider sources that offer viewpoints from across the spectrum. So I run into students in the past where they only go for the center. They only use the sources from the center, and they're like, okay, miss, are they getting all the information? No, they're not, right? There might be certain sides or perspectives that are left off. So what you really want to do is you want to get a source from each one. I'm going to look on what's on the right, I'm going to look what's on the left, and I'm going to look what's in the middle. Now I have a full understanding of that topic. And that's important because when you're trying to talk about a topic, you want to be as knowledgeable as you can, right? Nothing is worse than stating an opinion and then you don't know anything about it, right? So I run the debate team, right? So I always tell my debaters, you need to know all sides because you need to know what the other person can come at you with, right? You don't want to be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know how to handle that because I don't know what he's talking about. You always want to be, huh? Offense. There's actually nothing off limits in debate. So, very controversial, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting ready to start again. Yeah. You have to be pretty knowledgeable and yeah. So, now that we've categorized it, you're going to be able to use it more often when you're speaking, right? Because I'm going to ask you to defend yourself. But I do have some disclaimers and important things that you need to know. So when it comes to biases and ideologies, I acknowledge and admit that I have my own, and I may share those with you on occasion. However, I will not tell you how to believe. As my student, I want you to determine your own biases and develop your own ideologies. So I'm a very open person. I'm going to tell you stories about my life. I'm going to talk to you about my thoughts. However, those are never meant to influence you. All that is meant to do is give you perspective and other scenarios for you to consider when you're creating your own ideas. It's very important for you to have your own ideas and think for yourself, okay? With that in mind, I promise to always be respectful of your thoughts, no matter their biases or where they fall on the spectrum. Therefore, I ask you to think and express yourself without fear of judgment. So I used to have a student that was, his viewpoints were, one is going to be the president, extreme, hardcore extreme. And I was like, oof, kind of scary sometimes. However, I always respected him enough to listen to him. However, he was respectful of me enough for me to come back at him and say, well, what about this? What about that? And have an open discussion. That is the way I want this classroom to be. We will respect each other. No idea is stupid. No idea is like, oh, that's crazy. No. Why do you think that way? Okay? And we'll have an open discussion. So, keeping that all in mind, all I ask is that whatever you share, you be prepared to support your ideas because you'll often be called to do so in the real world. So let's practice listening to, defending, and adjusting your ideas. This is something I carry with me, not just in class, outside of class. If you ever get to meet my oldest son, which will probably be a while because he just joined the Navy, he will tell you that even at home, if he states an opinion, I'm like, well, why do you think that way? What are your sources? Do you have data to back that up? Like, so you have to, and the same thing with me, because he'll be like, well, why do you think you, so just beware, Miss Garcia is an uber nerd. When I say an uber nerd, I mean I devour all kinds of knowledge, and I am a nerd on all levels and know all subjects and topics. So if you're gonna come at me, be prepared, because I will take you down, okay? You'd be surprised. So I'm just saying, whatever you drop an idea, you can't just say, here you go, Miss Garcia, I think this. Because I'm going to be like, why? Why do you think that way? Well, because of this. Well, do you have anything to back it up? Right? Because I'm trying to prepare you as you move on. And that's not just going to help you in English class, that's going to help you in the world. Because how many times you come across people that question you? You need to be able to think on your feet and you use backup, okay? Does that sound fair? Yes, no, maybe so? You think you'll survive? I think so. Okay, so, all right. Any questions about this? Okay, before we close out for the day, I do have one other thing I have to show you, and it's vocabulary. So each unit is gonna have a lot of vocabulary. I'm not a huge fan of vocabulary, especially when it's taught in isolation. You know what that means? By itself. Like, well, I'm never gonna give you a whole bunch of words and say, okay, just define them and not explain them to you. I like to teach them in context. So with that in mind, in your OneNote class notebook, I have uploaded a Unit 2 vocabulary sheet, okay? Is there any questions about OneNote? Because some people were having trouble logging in. No? Not in this class? I don't think so. Okay, so these ones are going to be found under the class notes under Unit 2 vocabulary. And I broke them into sections for you. So you have the vocabulary term and the definition, and this is the section. Now, some of them I was nice enough to fill in for you because I went over them last week, and I didn't want to make you go back and fill those in. So I gave you the definitions, okay? So this is what it's going to look like, and you're going to use the draw text box tool to input the definitions. But I need to make sure that you guys can do this properly. So what's due tomorrow by 11:59 is I need you to go find these two terms and define them. So you're going to look for literary devices. You're going to define diction. And I want you to copy the definition from the top 11 literary devices that were in the week of August 21st. But don't use the words. I want the actual definition. And then for rhetorical devices, I want you to use this definition. The use of language and some literary devices in a way to convey a meaning or to persuade the reader or audience. So in plain speak, basically they're literary devices that help persuade you of something, try to convince you of something. So are there any questions about what you have to do for that assignment? Okay. So what's going to happen is each day I'm going to tell you, okay, I go look on logical fallacies. And then within that lesson, you're going to find the definition, okay? So again, I'll never just teach it in isolation. It'll be in context. And it'll be broken up. So, all right. Well, if there's no questions, that's it for today. Go ahead and start working on your discussions. Go ahead and you might as well get these two done. And then if you have any missing work, I'm going to be grading tonight and tomorrow. So you want to go ahead and get that in. I am taking late work, so just get it in. A folder? I can get you a folder. What are you talking about, like? No, I just let you go ahead and upload it where it's supposed to be at. Yeah. Because in reality, I don't take off that many points, so it's fine if it's late. And it already marks it late if you turn it in. Okay? Any questions? All right. Well, you guys are free to work on your stuff. And if you have any questions, let me know.